I don't know about you, but I hate wasting food. And every time I see a fruit fly, it's just a reminder that I let something go bad. To help prevent this, I like to keep an eye on my fruits and veggies. And if I don't think I'll use them in time, I throw them in the freezer so that I can have them for the next time I make a smoothie. But once you have fruit flies or gnats in your home, you're going to want to get rid of them ASAP. And by that I mean the fruit flies, not the fruits and veggies. Here's what we're going to talk about today. What's the difference between a fruit fly and a gnat? Can fruit flies contaminate food and cause disease? How do fruit flies appear out of nowhere? How long do fruit flies live? What is the benefit of fruit flies? Can I eat food that fruit flies have been on? Or the flies themselves? Ew. Will fruit flies die in the fridge? And of course, ways to get rid of fruit flies, including traps and methods. And finally, how to prevent future fruit fly invasions. What's the difference between a fruit fly and a gnat? I should mention off the top here that fruit flies and gnats are different, even though they're both small and are members of the fly family. Fruit flies, for instance, are from the fly order, the phylum Arthropoda, and the specific scientific name Drosophila melanogaster. Fruit flies and gnats are similar in that they're both small, annoying, and found around the house. Gnats also sometimes bite, whereas fruit flies don't because they don't have any, quote, biting parts in their mouth. They do not look the same either, really, if you take the time to look at each of them closely. Also, they gather in different areas and for different reasons. This should help you begin to form a strategy to eradicate fruit flies for good. Fruit flies look like tiny little flies and have red eyes, whereas gnats look more like a mosquito. The other big difference is that gnats are more concerned with your potted plants and live in the soil, and fruit flies are after your food, particularly fruit, and the general grossness around any home that doesn't keep things spick and span all the time. Personally, I find them both to be a nuisance, but this video specifically focuses on how I deal with getting rid of fruit flies more than gnats. Can fruit flies contaminate food and cause disease? One of the reasons I think that fruit flies need to be dealt with ASAP is because they do contribute disease in general and potentially make you sick. No, they aren't bringing back the bubonic plague, or are even really much of a threat per se, but they are still basically an indication that disease is coming because they're attracted to and consume filth. Bottom line, they're gross. Not exactly a danger to our race, but certainly not something you want on your food. Also, they're only really there because people are kind of gross and there's mess left out and they're coming after it. So we have to put the blame on ourselves somewhat. The main, quote, feature of fruit flies that most people are aware of is that they're primarily attracted to old and rotting food. If you have an open compost bin with some moldy peaches exposed to the air, that's just perfect for your average fruit fly. For the record, fruit flies aren't just attracted to things like overripe fruit and that onion or potato in the back of your pantry. They also like veggies too. They're also fond of dish rags, mops, trash bins, and drains. Basically, they like moisture and eat garbage. Grossness aside, you might wonder, what's so bad about fruit flies really? Because besides swarming around and landing on things like your half-eaten sandwich, what's so bad about them? Well, I'll tell you. The reason they cause contamination is because of their breeding habits and short life cycles. Which brings us to our next question, how do fruit flies appear out of basically nowhere? The reason fruit flies seem to appear out of nowhere is because just one little fruit fly can lay up to 500 eggs, and within hours, those eggs are hatched and flying around your or my kitchen. Here's a fun fact for you. They can lay up to 500 eggs on your food after having sex on it. So my opinion is that I don't like that. The fruit, like say for instance a mango that's been partially sliced open and left on the counter, is the perfect place for either them to lay their eggs or to do their lovemaking. Right. The problem here, as I see it, is that since fruit flies can appear en masse in a matter of hours, this means that once you cut that orange in half and leave it there on your counter, thinking you'll come back to it shortly, that's plenty of time for fruit flies to find your fruit, have sex on it, and then have a family on your fruit by the time you come back to it. How long do fruit flies actually live? That few hours of you leaving your fruit aside momentarily is a few months in fruit fly time, since their lifespans are about 40 to 50 days long. A few hours is enough time for a couple of love-struck fruit flies to meet, fall in love, and have 500 children. Those children then grow up during the time that you took to go out for coffee that afternoon, and they had children of their own. So that's 500 times 500 children. Oh no. So the question isn't so much how long do they live, which I guess is an interesting question, but more importantly, how often do they procreate? The reason that they never seem to die is because generations of fruit flies are being lived out on the surfaces of your counter, sink, and food. Remember, they mate on your food and eat it by spitting on it. Since they do live for, say, 45 days, they are like humans in that they are always trying to further their annoying little species, except they have way, way, way more children than we can have, unless we're talking about Genghis Khan, who populated half the world. And then those young maggots turn into more fruit flies, and those fruit flies live for a couple of months, copulating all the time and making more and more and more of those things. This, I guess, is why they never really go away. There are differences between male and female fruit flies, and I suppose some scientists know the difference, but the only reason I care about the difference is because if there's enough boys and girls, it means they're going to get it on and start spreading everywhere. No, these tiny flies won't go away on their own or simply die off without you taking action, so they must all be killed. Fruit fly genocide it is. But hold on, what's the benefit of fruit flies? Is there a benefit? Remember how I just said we need to eradicate them like 2 seconds ago in some kind of fruit fly holocaust? Well, scratch that for a minute. Fruit flies can apparently be helpful to humans. How are they beneficial to us? Get ready for this one. First of all, they like to dine on our rotting fruit and veggies, like I said, and that means that they're eating the decaying matter that might otherwise become fungal that we would eat, causing bacterial infections, so thanks a lot. Also, if the rotten fruit sat around even longer, the bad food would start to attract other things, starting with normal houseflies, roaches, and beetles. Then come the mice, rats, squirrels, snakes, and giant Japanese hornets from across the sea straight into your backyard or screen door. Oh, and don't forget the scavenger birds, gulls, who come along and crap all over everything. And once those unholy creatures arrive, it's a real party, but not quite. Not until the raccoon and skunks get on the scene. This whole fiasco can take place inside or outside, wherever the food is going bad. Kind of makes you think that fruit flies aren't so bad after all. Maybe. On top of all of this, believe it or not, humans are actually not dissimilar genetically from fruit flies. What? Yeah. The genes in fruit flies are similar to human genes, so much so that many of the diseases we have, they have, or vice versa. And so, geneticists study fruit flies all the time because they've mapped out their genome, fully sequenced March 2000, and their short life cycles make them easy to study. We can even understand our own nervous systems better via biological studies in fruit flies. As you can see, fruit flies are very important to us as humans in many ways. You could argue that having them crawling on your food is still gross though, which it totally is. So I guess we might want to kill them anyway. Can I eat the food that fruit flies have been on? Or can I even eat the flies themselves? Well, you can if you want to. You probably won't die. But is it actually good for you to eat the food they've been on? Well, that depends on what disease the fly itself has and what it has ingested. Best case scenario, you eat some semi-rotten fruit that the fly has been on and nothing will happen. That's because the fly hasn't been puking or pooping or having sex on that food, and it's a particularly clean, living, polite fly. What about a worst case scenario? Well, flies are known to carry lots of harmful diseases to humans, including typhoid fever, dysentery, cholera, polio, yaws, anthrax, tularemia, leprosy, and tuberculosis. So absolute worst case scenario is you catch all of them at once and die quickly and horribly. Just kidding. So in the event that a fruit fly flies in your mouth and down your throat, I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's just slightly gross, but there's not much of a chance of you contracting any kind of serious disease. Will fruit flies die in the fridge? Many a time has a fruit fly found its way into the fridge. This happens because they were on a piece of fruit, munching away and having a jolly old time, and that fruit ended up in the fridge without anyone knowing, the fruit fly included, transported through the ignorance of their whereabouts. Once in the fridge, the temperature drops and the fruit flies don't like it. The average temperature of a fridge is about 37 degrees Fahrenheit. According to my fridge that I'm looking at right now, the freezer is 0 degrees. Once the temperature drops below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, the fruit flies catch what you might call a cold. In the beginning, they don't feel so well, Once it goes below 53 degrees Fahrenheit, their development into strong young future voters in the next fruit fly election is extremely hindered. In other words, they start to die. The issue is once fruit flies lay their eggs in something that goes in the fridge, those eggs can survive being in the fridge. Maybe not the freezer, but definitely the fridge. And also, if you're like me, you've probably seen fruit flies happily or angrily, it's hard to tell, flying out of your fridge. Here are the ways to get rid of fruit flies, including traps and methods. Let's start with the apple cider vinegar trap. This is a quick way to get rid of fruit flies because they're attracted to the sweetness of the apple cider vinegar and the sugar. You're going to want to combine apple cider vinegar, approximately 1 tablespoon, sugar, about half a teaspoon, water, 2 tablespoons, and dish soap, 1 teaspoon, into a small container. For instance, an old water bottle should work well, and leave it out near where they're gathering. The fruit flies will smell the sweet mixture, fly into the bottle, and drown in the mixture. The dish soap makes them unable to fly out, and using a water bottle helps to prevent the more ruthless ones from escaping. Number 2, fruit trap, i.e. use a banana. For this, you'll need a piece of rotten or overripe fruit, or even a banana peel will work. A cup or bottle, and plastic wrap or a piece of paper, and an elastic band. First, take the container you're using and fill it about 1/5 to 1/4 of the way up with the fruit. You want enough to attract them, but not enough that they can easily climb out. Then cover the lid with the plastic wrap and poke some holes in with a push pin, sewing needle, or something else small enough for the bugs to climb in but not climb out easily. If you're using paper and an elastic band, you'll do everything the same except cover the container with the paper, wrap the elastic band around it to hold it in place, and poke some holes. So basically they find their way in, but they can't get out. Number 3, bleach in the drains, or baking soda. This is especially helpful if you find you have gnats/fruit flies coming out of your drains. Just as you might have guessed, for this step you're going to need to be pouring some bleach into the drains. Start with pouring 1 cup of water into a container and add about a teaspoon of bleach into it, and then slowly pour it down the drain, being sure to hit the sides. This should kill any fruit flies nesting/reproducing in the drains. Number 4, red wine trap. Similar to the vinegar trap, for this you will need a small amount of red wine and about 1/5 part of dish soap. So 4 tablespoons of red wine to 1 tablespoon of dish soap. The wine will attract the fruit flies, which they love, while the dish soap will make them unable to fly. Number 5, catchy indoor insect trap. For those of you who don't have time to make any of the above mentioned traps, or you want to try a device which should do the job for you, there's always the catchy indoor insect trap. This is basically a bug vacuum that uses UV lights and glue to trap and kill mosquitoes, fruit flies, and smaller bugs. It doesn't work on big house flies though. The catchy insect trap is a kid-friendly device with no zapping and it's non-toxic that you can use indoors, which is even registered with the Environmental Protection Agency. It has a lot of other features as well, but essentially, this is a simple and fairly cost-effective way to take care of your fruit fly problem. Prevent future fruit fly invasions. In order to prevent fruit flies and gnats in the future, make sure to 1. Use a sealed compost bin and avoid keeping organic trash indoors. I love composting, but it attracts bugs. Because of this, I use a small jar inside my kitchen and keep it sealed when I'm not using it, and then dump it in my compost bin outside whenever it gets full. This helps tremendously because there's never any rotting food in my kitchen, not even in the garbage. Number 2, if you're going away, freeze your fruit and veggies. Not only does this help keep the bugs away, it's also awesome not having to pick up soggy apple or shriveled oranges and put them in the compost when you come back from a trip. This also makes for delicious smoothies later, and even easier smoothies if you can cut or peel your veggies before freezing them. Number 3, don't let dirty dishes pile up. I find this one especially hard. After eating, I just want to relax for a minute and digest my food. And then, after that minute, my free time is up and I need to get work done. To help avoid letting dirty dishes sit, I just make sure to rinse them after eating, and usually realize once I start, this isn't so bad, and then I wash them all. It's so much easier to do dishes when it's just from one meal. Number 4, wash produce immediately. I'm not sure why this works, but if you give your veggies or fruits a quick rinse once you buy them, it will reduce the chances of an infestation. Number 5, plants. I am obsessed with plants, but one thing I could live without is fungus gnats. Like I mentioned previously, these guys like to lay their eggs in the soil and they fly around the plants. To get rid of fungus gnats, you can use any of the above listed tricks, but another one specific to these creatures that I just recently learned is lighting a match and placing it in the soil. You light the match, let it burn for a few seconds, and then blow it out and place it on top of the soil. Somehow this gets rid of fungus gnats. Amazing! Fruit flies can also be frustrating, but knowing how to combat them makes a heap of difference. My favorite part of these DIY recipes is that you're not using crazy toxic chemicals to get rid of them. What are some of your favorite ways to get rid of fruit flies? Which ones work best for you? Tell us below.